I will say that, and this is something that we need to be better as men, is that, you know, like if you look at some of the statistics of like suicide rate and all that, like men are really afraid to talk or open their feelings, you know. That's one thing I had to learn like growing up now, like not to be afraid to show your emotions or like dealing with stuff. You know, I have, for example, big shout out to my friend MJ. He just dealt with cancer too, and I remember having conversations with him about that. And a lot of people don't talk about that because it's like maybe for Hispanics it's like a third world country, like there's this machismo thing, and like obviously it's a bad way like to teach men, like, you know, oh, you gotta be tough, and nowadays I'm glad that like social media has kind of opened up, like, hey, like don't be afraid to talk to people, don't be afraid to talk to a therapist if you're dealing with anxiety and stuff like that, you know. That's what I learned now, you know. Back in the day, like I bottled so much.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday for sure.
If you guys don't recognize that voice, it is the one and only CRG, otherwise known as Cristian Gomez.
Mondays are usually my day out, so if I'm out of it, my bad.
That's okay, that's okay. So as you guys have probably heard from the previous episode, that Sam has decided to leave Girls on Fire. Not for good, but for the time being. So I decided that I'm going to take this time to just fill in her shoes with some of the people that inspire me here in Austin and that I think, you know, can help inspire others. So what better way than to ask the one and only CRG to come on in? Because like from the last episode that we did on Girls on Fire, I did get a lot of feedback from it, and a lot of people were like, yo man, like I had no idea that you went through this or experienced that. And one of the biggest topics that I got was going deeper into your cancer. So I thought, what better way than to dissect that?
Yeah, it's funny, like I get asked a lot whenever like they hear about that. They're like, man, I didn't know you went through cancer. Luckily it wasn't as aggressive, like as bad as like some other people. But yeah, it's a kind of a crazy story how it all happened, but I think it was just like a very bad time of my life.
Well, how old were you when you found out?
So it was in 2013, so I'll say about 23.
23?
Yeah. So I was actually diagnosed on August the 13th. So this Wednesday I actually will be 9 years remission.
Okay. For those of you that do not know who Cristian Gomez is, he's one of the up and coming, I wouldn't say up and coming, you're pretty much established here.
I'm still up and coming. I tell myself that all the time.
He's one of our bigger DJs here in Austin, Texas. And if you ever have a CRG party, you know it's going to be super awesome. He plays the best music. You'll see me literally be like, where's Cristian? And I'll come in and then just like dance for a little bit and leave. But for those of you that don't know him, he used to be the resident DJ at Bungalow. He is now, I know.
Missed that place.
Yes. Now he DJs at Summit, Key Bar, and Parlor Room.
Yeah, so I'm still within the company, so shout out to Donnie, but yeah, he is owner of Summit, Parlor Room, and Key Bar, and I'm their entertainment director, so basically I handle the bookings and artist relations whenever we book artists and stuff like that for our venues. So yeah, but yeah, so ever since Bungalow closed, yeah, I moved to Parlor, and then I moved to Key Bar, and then yeah, at Summit. So basically I'm just around those three venues right now, handling the music and all the good stuff to throw a party, you know.
Yes. So Cristian has just been a very big important person here in Austin, Texas. So last time, if you guys want to go and check out the last episode that we did with him, we can deep dive, and that was deep dove, words are hard, of like his rise into the community.
Yeah, we talked about like
dating. We talked about
dating a DJ. What is it? The other one was the pet peeves.
Yes.
So if you ever don't want to get on my bad side, go listen to that.
Can you play Bad Bunny?
That's the new one now.
Yes. So I would go check that out and then come back to this one because that episode was actually super awesome. But I really want to talk about this because I feel like not a lot of people talk about this, because I know quite a bit of people in the industry, not necessarily in the like awesome music industry, but like in the service industry that deal with this, and they're from the male perspective that don't talk about it.
For sure. And
It's
that's
crazy.
it's just one thing I will say that, and this is something that we need to be better as men, is that we're not open. You know, like if you look at some of the statistics of like suicide rate and all that, like men are really afraid to talk or open their feelings. You know, and that's one thing I had to learn like growing up now, like not to be afraid to show your emotions or like dealing with stuff. You know, I have for example, big shout out to my friend MJ. He just dealt with cancer too, and I remember having conversations with him about that. And a lot of people don't talk about that because it's like maybe for Hispanics it's like a third world country. Like there's this machismo thing, and like obviously it's a bad way like to teach men like oh, you got to be tough and nowadays I'm glad that like social media has kind of opened up like, hey, like don't be afraid to talk to people, don't be afraid to talk to a therapist if you're dealing with anxiety and stuff like that, and that's what I learned now. Back in the day, like I bottled so much, and I think maybe like you never know, like when I got cancer, like it didn't run in my family, like maybe like high cholesterol and blood, but that's this typical Hispanic shit, right? But I think during that time it was probably the lowest time in my life. Before that, like I was dealing probably with like one of my biggest breakups, because I've like I guess never really experienced what love was, so like that was kind of a new thing, and like being depressed with that, drinking was another thing, dealing with stress, with school and all that. Like I think so many factors of that happen, and then I sometimes even say that me getting cancer was one of those things where nobody wants to get cancer, but it was like an eye opener. Like man, like experiencing that, being around other people that have cancer, seeing how old they are and how much they lived and all that made me like realize like it just there's more to life, but yeah, like that was like, man, like thinking about it now, every time I see it now, like how it was back in the day, like how bad it was. Like I mean, I was even drinking in class, like how depressed I was. Like
You were drinking in class?
I was drinking class. I was drinking all the time. And
was that just because you were just like
I just
that
wanted
was your release?
I just wanted to be numb. And my thing is, my cancer really started from like, I will say my cancer's probably been around, who knows, but I have this thing called ulceritis, which is like a bunch of ulcers, and I've been having ulcers since I was 12. And drinking obviously is very bad for your ulcers. Like people don't understand like how much your stomach works to digest alcohol, and just eating bad. I was not even working out. Like it was just so much that led to that point where, luckily for me, like one of my ulcers just, I guess, like kind of busted my stomach open. And I remember this vividly. Like I was working at Home Depot and I start throwing up, and I'm hungover from the party last night. And
did you have any idea that it had to do with your ulcer, or did you think it was
oh,
just
I already
a bad
knew.
hangover?
No, so I knew it was my ulcers for sure because I was getting a lot of pain from it, and obviously like I will take medicine for it just to kind of like relieve the pain. So like doing that, alcohol, and then like taking like Vicodin or shit like that.
You were
like,
taking Vicodin?
Yeah, for sure. Like
that must have been like, you must have been in a lot of pain.
And
scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah, like taking Vicodin, and then for me to wake up, I would like go to school and like take Adderall. Like I was just mixing so much shit, didn't give a fuck. Like I said, it was like probably the lowest point in my life. Really don't talk about that because it's like, but I'm like now grown enough to like be expressing about that. But yeah, and then I guess one day like my ulcer just, it was terrible. Like I literally like was throwing up, and like my digestive, like my esophagus is burning. Never have felt that before. And then I remember my manager taking me to the hospital. They were like, all right, we need to do some checks and stuff like that. And they decided to go into some esophagus. They started scraping some stuff up, and they found a malignant tumor in my intestine. So at the time, I mean, this is crazy that I say this like now, like at the time I remember vividly there was two ways to go. Like obviously the cancer, the chemo radiation side was the 99% way to go. And then there's obviously the surgery, which is a kind of 50-50 surgery. They have to open your stomach up, take the esophagus out. They got to peel all that, all the tumors and stuff like that. And the thing is, it's like they kind of have to kind of like freeze your body and stuff like that, because it's like they're taking almost your whole stomach out to like kind of scrape off the tumor. And at the time, I was so depressed, like I didn't care about life, that I wanted to go that route. I was like, I don't give a fuck.
What was it like? This?
My mom. My mom's the one that was just like, come on, like, and like
Did they tell you like a probability of like what your outcome would be? Like,
if
you go this way, you probably have like 50% chance of waking up, or like 60%.
Yeah. So they like most of the time they give you the normal statistic. Like for most people it's 50-50, but obviously like age comes along and all that, so they go with all that. But like I remember my mom vividly talking to me on the phone, and she's like, man, don't do it. You're 23 years old, like you got a lot to live, like. And I only did it for her because I love my mom. Like she's been there for me, like for everything. So decided to do the whole like chemo thing and all that, and luckily it was like nothing crazy, like only had to do like 2 or 3 months. But man, it was probably one of the most eye-opening thing, like hearing other stories. Like I know for like people that were dealing with cancer during COVID, like it was different because you were isolated, like, and sometimes like these places you get to sit down with other people that are doing this like same treatment with you, so you get to talk and stuff like that. And there was even people that they stopped showing up, and it made you realize, like, man, like there's these people, different ages, women, men, and they're trying to like survive to like maybe see their grandkids one day, or like still kind of live life. And to me, like that moment was one of those things where, like, I don't want to say I needed this because nobody wants cancer, but like it made me like, damn, like I got a lot to live for. And so it just I will say there's some things that I did after that I kind of like look back at it, I'm like, man, I probably should have done that. But like, and that's one thing I was telling MJ, like one of my things that I did, like I almost was gonna graduate from UTSA, and I loved music that whole time. That's where like really my DJ career thing started, where I decided to drop out with probably a semester and a half left to be a software engineer major, and decided to become a DJ. And basically I like completely changed my entire career. But the only reason I did that, it was one of those things where like have a second chance in life. Let me follow the dreams that I've always wanted to do. My parents didn't support that, but yeah, it just I'm thankful that happened, because if it wouldn't have happened, who knows what route I would have been taking, like being depressed and all that. Like now I haven't been as like that sad since that moment. I always look back at that moment as like things could be worse, But
do you think that's what's kept you to have such a positive outlook in life?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I think because I mean, even like the journey after that, it was tough. Like, I mean, I'm talking about like, medical bills. I couldn't work much because I was sick most of the time and all that. So, like, it was hard to pay bills and all that. Even like getting evicted, that happened. And luckily for who I call my big brother, which is one of my best friends, Duano, like if it wasn't for him, he took me in, he gave me a place to stay, he taught me how to DJ, he basically taught me all the ropes, right? But it just, to start your career over, like nowadays I think about it now because I'm older. Like at the time I was just like, man, because one was following a dream that I've always wanted to do, but I always had that thing in the back of my mind, like this can come back again. So you were kind of like living the moment. But now when I'm going to 32, going to 33, 34, right? You start seeing like, shit, like did I like act rational? Like, did I just jump the wagon and all that? I could say I'm happy now, but you know, you start thinking about your future, like we always do. You know, you don't want to be a, I don't want to be a 50-year-old DJ. Like, you see me DJ at 50 years old in Austin, Texas, please shoot me. Like,
No.
like, I'm just joking, but you know, I do love what I do. You know, it just, you know, I also want to do more than what I'm doing right now, and but yeah, like I always say, like, you know, no matter how like low you are in life, things happen for a reason, but you always have to talk to people, you know, like, and that's one thing that I started learning, like, later on, like, you know, obviously like developed anxiety recently, and you know, I think one of my things was because I bottled in emotions a lot. I was very expressing. Now I'm like, you know, when I get it, I'm like, man, all right, something's triggering this, like something's bothering me, right? Like I kind of know now, like something's bothering me for me to feel this way, or like, you know, and that's probably sometimes one of the things we like to be perfectionists too in life. You know, creators like to be perfectionists. So if something is not right,
Yep.
the anxiety comes in, and then you're like feeling overwhelmed, and then you're like, fuck, and then you feel defeated. And for me, it's like, you know, I always think about like going through cancer, and I always remind myself, like, if you're able to deal with something like that, you can probably like do anything, you know? And that's to everybody that listens to the podcast. Like, you have to really realize, like, and it's all cliche when you say, hey, like, there's other people going through worse shit, you know? But realistically, like, if you have a good core of friends that can help you and support you, and talk to them, because you'll be surprised how much talking, and if you don't like to talk and you're very private, at least write it down. You know, there's one thing that I like to do, like sometimes, you know, you have a board and you're like, okay, these are the goals I need to meet, these are the goals I want to do. And you know, that's your reflection of who you are, you know, like, and you gotta tell yourself, like, man, I gotta do that. Like, finding ways to like be better, because, you know, depression sucks. You know, it makes you do stupid shit. You know, like I think about how fucked up I was getting, and you know, like, yeah, and obviously, you know, you see me get fucked up too, like when I was like, but obviously after COVID it was just weird, right? But yeah, like it just, I can talk about this all day, but you just never know, like, when life is gonna hit you like that, you know. And I'm really thankful that I've come to realize terms with myself that if something like that were to happen again, like, I have people that are gonna be there to support me, you know, regardless of like how isolated I am, or, you know, like I've, like, when I tell people, like, I've sacrificed a lot to be where I'm at right now. You know, I've lost friends, I didn't go to wedding events and all that. And so, you know, you always got to tell yourself, like, if you really want that goal, then and you know it's gonna pay off, don't give up on that, you know. And that was one thing that cancer taught me the most. Seeing these people being like maybe in their 80s, still trying to live, while I'm 23 years old. I have not even experienced a quarter of what they've done. Mm-hmm. You know, they got to party in the fucking 70s. You know, like they got.
I know, dang, what a time to be alive.
They, you know, the stories they were saying, and I'm just like, fuck, man, I just became 23. I've only been legal for 2 years. I haven't even fucking traveled. I didn't even travel that much at the time, right? So, you know, it's just crazy, like, and like I tell people too, like, if we ever want to talk about shit like that, I'm even like sometimes on my Instagram, like when I recently recorded a podcast with some of my homies, they heard my podcast and were like, yo, man, like, I really want to get, like, that's one thing, like, obviously, like, people don't know now, like, I don't drink anymore. I'm sober now. And it was to put my mental health first. And that's another thing too. Like, if I had put my mental health first at that time, I don't think I would have gotten depressed. I don't think I would have like took the route that maybe got me to get cancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then at the time, it's like also too is like you gotta go really low in life to learn how to be better at the like better later. Because if you're never low, you really didn't live. And I hate to say that, you know, because I don't know, like for example, what's one time that you look at life now like you've been very low and then like seeing yourself grow now and you're like, damn, or like it's the same thing like for me, like what do you tell that person that you were so low, like, hey, like what are you gonna tell that person? Like, don't give up. You know, like you have no idea what life's gonna bring to you right now and stuff like that.
Well, I think that's a great question to ask, is if you right now, right this second, if you can go back in time to like you sitting like 23 years old, sitting in the hospital, getting cancer treatment, what is one thing you would tell that younger version of yourself?
Well, for one, I would tell them to finish school. That's for one. You know, I come to realize like this, like, you know, and even for us in the industry, like, even for you, for example, like, you don't want to be bartending after 40, you know? So.
Please shoot me.
See what I'm saying? So, like, you know, I always say that even if you get some education, get that education to kind of like base off something you're good at and then make it even bigger. You know, it's good to have different avenues of lanes. You know, I know like a lot of people in the industry that, you know, DJs nowadays, like they love the high life, they love the rock star life and all that. But eventually that life stops, you know. Bartending is really good. Bartending people make a lot of money. But if you're just blowing money on like Louis, you know, like
I wish I was making Louis money, but
you know,
you're
like,
spending it on alcohol, you're spending it on things that like sheen, like ladies.
but you
Stop
know,
it.
like, you know, for it just there's a lot you can do with that money, you know, and I always tell people that if you're making over 6 figures, your 20s, you could probably have some real estate by the time you're in your 30s, and you can be probably even living off that, you know. But that's something we don't get taught because it's like we go through school and then, you know, they tell you to go to college, but they really don't tell you why to go to college. Like they just tell you like you just need education. But the older you get, you're like, oh man, I'm getting all this money. And then like when you see it back now, you're like, damn, where did all my money go?
Yeah. That was literally me when I was in Vegas. When I did my taxes for the first time, the first year I lived there. I made $120,000
Where's it at?
down the hole.
Yeah.
I was an idiot. I was buying all the affection of everybody that had doubted me.
How long ago was this?
Some 29. Fuck. Don't make me do the math. Like 7 years ago, 8 years ago?
So.
No, 8 years ago.
So if it was 8 years ago, at the time you probably could have got a 5-bedroom house for probably like $250,000 in Vegas.
Yeah.
You know?
But I didn't think about that. I thought that was the most money I'd ever made because I had gone from bartending in Arizona to there. So in Arizona, the most I'd ever made, like on a shift, was $300.
Yeah.
And that was a Saturday.
That was because college kids are just cheap as fuck.
So going to Vegas and making an $800 in like a morning shift, it was just so consistent. Like the less I'd ever made bartending in Vegas was like $100. So I was making such good money.
Yeah.
So when my friends would come into town, I remember I had 2 of my girlfriends come in. I took their asses to Tiffany's. I bought them Tiffany's. I bought bottle service at fucking Marquee. I bought them clothes. Like I was showering them with gifts. And on top of that, I was paying my mom's mortgage. I was paying my dad's rent. I was just balling. Nothing to show for it. Now but here's the thing, is that when the tables flipped, when I started losing everything and when I had nothing, they all ghosted.
And I was just gonna ask.
Crickets.
I was just gonna ask.
Except for my mom.
I was just gonna ask you. I was like, which one of those friend groups are you still friends with?
I'm not really friends with them.
Exactly.
But I mean, that was a really cool memory, so I don't beat myself up for that.
For sure.
But being at a point where I'm at now, I'm about to be 30. So you have to take those mistakes and like apply them now. But it is very true what you're saying. Like, don't, like, if you're making such good money, okay, think about it. I think about it like this. There's a thing that I saw on TikTok. This is also like one of the things of why I stopped drinking again, because I remember the first time I stopped drinking was about the same time you quit. It was at Bungalow. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
We started doing shrooms instead. Sorry, Donnie. But
oh, trust me, he prefers sober CRG all day. So.
Well, I just remember we both got in relationships at the time. We both like became sober, and we both like we really bonded over that. I think that's like when our friendship really like.
Yeah.
But then I went off the rocker. You stayed content. Super proud of you. But then I went back into it, and it was a TikTok I saw, and it was like, you got to start investing in yourself. And I was like, that's so true, because I started looking at all my bank statements, and I was like, all right, I made $6,000 last month. I was like, how much is in my bank account? And what? I was like, what?
Trust me, I look at my tax write-offs all the time, and boy, even in the first 6 months that I went, like when I was drinking before I went sober, I was like, man, if I would have kept going this route, holy shit. Like, and you know, it's an eye-opener to you, you know, and don't get me wrong, like, if you like to drink, go ahead. Like, nobody's telling you, like, not to, but just there's so many, like, repercussions of drinking. Like, for example, like, this is perfect example, like what you just talked about, where the amount of money I was spending on bottle service, and now, like, where are those friends at? Like, oh, like, he doesn't party no more. All right.
He's not fun.
He's not fun and all that. I'm still fun, you know.
I remember you did bottle service, but you weren't drinking. You were still sober, and I remember I was sober, and I remember we were both like, I was just dancing, vibing, and everyone's like, "Hey, Esther, you drunk?" And I'm like, "No, I'm sober."
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I can't have fun, and you were the same way too.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you know, it's not like I'm a different person. Like, you know, sometimes we do become dependent on alcohol because it's like we have social anxiety, we have all these traumas that, you know, makes us feel a certain way where,
when
you know,
triggered.
Yeah, for example, like when I felt anxious when I was DJing, I like to take a couple shots because it loosens me up and then I go. But then it's like, realistically, you're becoming dependent on alcohol just for you to feel better. That sounds so bad, like, you know, and it's not like you're an alcoholic, but like, think about like how many like things you can do differently instead, you know, like, for example, like microdosing on shrooms, like that makes you feel looser without the hangover or without the like feeling sick the next day, because man, it got to a point where even 1 or 2 shots was giving me anxiety, hangovers and all that, and eventually I told myself I couldn't do that, like, you know. And even then, like, I think about too, like, you know, after, you know, being locked down from COVID and then going and raging, like, I came raging hard after COVID, like, it was so bad. But then I vividly remember, like, my first thing when I started getting anxiety, which I never used to have, because, like, I was a very confident, strong person, like, you know, I can go, like, I used to wake up without hangovers, like, that's how crazy it was. But, like, I think, like, a lot of people changed after COVID, being locked up at home and all that. Like, a lot of things were different because you were isolated from, like, the world and all that. So then I got social anxiety, which I never used to have. You know, even, like, DJing in big places, like, I never used to have that. So it was kind of like a reset button mentally and, like, you know, physically too. So, but, you know, that's the same reason, like, I decided to go sober, because it was just, I think about too, like, when I had cancer, right? I was drinking a lot too at that time. And I'm like, you know, I feel like I'm doing the same thing I'm doing now to kind of put a Band-Aid in my anxiety and mental health, when the same thing happened when I was depressed. I was drinking to be numb. So when you start realizing, like, I'm using alcohol to just put a Band-Aid on something, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know? And it's not that you're addicted, you're just trying to, like, become part of society, so you don't feel weird or different. It's okay to feel weird and different. I always tell people that don't be afraid to feel weird or different, because it's just like you're just in different wavelengths, and that doesn't matter. Like, you know, if somebody fucks with your wavelength, cool. You know, if they don't, it's not the end of the world.
No, it's the same thing in the industry too. It's like people like get anxious before they bartend, so they're like, oh, we're gonna have a few shots, or if it's slow, then it's like,
Oh yeah.
oh, you want to take a shot, and it's like, okay. But then by the end of the night, you're drunk, and then it's slower time to get out of work, and then it's like if you get a mini break, then what are you doing? You're going and trying to rip as many shots as you can on the block. And then I think one of the things too that I don't think people talk about is the first month of going sober. Is the first week is hard. I feel like that is the most challenging.
First 2 weeks.
Yes, because things start happening unexpectedly, and you have to actually address them soberly. You never know how dependent you are on alcohol for those 2 weeks. Like, it is very hard.
Yeah, and that's one thing for sure that I noticed, and I tell that to everybody that asks me, like, going sober, because the thing is, what you're doing is, when you're going sober, you're opening your mind more, and you're kind of seeing things in real time. So when you see things in real time, you're like, fuck, this is all going on at the same time, when it's really been doing that the whole time, but you've just been drinking and kind of been hazy about it.
Yep.
You know? So I always tell people the first 2 weeks, hardest ever, because like you start seeing everything, and like your body's like, oh man, like.
Or it's depending on how much you drink too.
Right.
But you also get a depressive state.
Mm-hmm.
You get FOMO. You start like, you get depressed. Like, I was depressed last week. And it wasn't because there was anything bad. I was just like, I don't have the desire to go out to the bars. So it's like, who am I? Like, that's where I want to hang out. That's where all my friends are. And then you start seeing the people that you surround yourself with, and you're like, do I actually really like them? Or is it because I'm just filling a void? Like, I've noticed a lot of people even if they're not in the industry, but they maybe hang out, is that they have to be around people to like ease their anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, okay, if this person's not paying attention to me, okay, I'm gonna bounce to the next bar because I know I'll run into 2-3 people that will pay attention to me. And then when that doesn't go like as planned, then they go and they just keep doing it. And then they just can't be alone with their own thoughts and their own mind.
Yeah.
And then when you get to that point, it's like taking a step back. It's like taking those little rose-colored glasses off, and then you're like, do I actually really like them? Do they make me feel good? Do they inspire me? No. And then you see your future, and then you're like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be that person that sits at the bar drinking.
That's crazy. And then the thing is too, like, negativity becomes like times 10 for some reason, because it's like you start seeing everything, and like you really think about your friend groups, your job, everything you do, every single little detail. Well, you know, what do I do this for? Or like, and then you start even questioning your own self, like, well, then who am I? Am I just, you know, like at the time I was like, am I really just CRG, or am I Craig? You know, like.
R.I.P. Craig.
But, yeah. But,
Craig is CRG's alter ego.
Yes.
It was wild. I remember Craig.
Everybody does. I mean, there's still people like, hey, where's Craig been at? What? Beats me.
He's 6 feet under, my dude.
But, you know, it you know, I remember, like, man, the first 2 weeks were tough. The thing is, it's like, I'm not the kind of person where it's just like, and to me, luckily for me, I'm like very into my mind where like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. You know, when I went sober, like before, I went like probably close to 2 years. And then obviously like one of my best friends passed away and went back to drinking. And, then obviously like I wasn't getting like super fucked up until after like pandemic. I was like, it was rage on, right? And but going back to being sober, like this last time recently, it was tough for the first 2-3 weeks, because, you know, there was obviously there's times when you start questioning like your life. You know, I remember one time, I don't know who it was, but I was DJing, and they always hit me up like, hey, like, can you help me skip the line of bungalow and all that?
I remember those very much so.
And now I look at it, nowhere to be found.
No, because they only wanted something from you.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
I've definitely have experienced that from leaving bungalow to rustic tap, where everybody would basically suck my wiener and then like nothing. I no longer had anything that they had to offer.
and you know, even like, and you know, let's even go dive deeper on this. Like, bungalow closing, it was tough for me because it was just like, I got comfortable and I loved what I was doing at bungalow and what we created. And to go somewhere else, I didn't know what was next for me. And that, you know, and that's the thing, like, a lot of people don't talk about is like, don't get comfortable. And that's going back to the subject of like us making money. We get comfortable making this money when we don't realize like this money's not forever. Like, because eventually we're gonna be looking old and wrinkly, and the other younger girl, the other young guy's gonna get hired. And
Not me, thanks to my girl Heather at Skin Parlor. Not me.
but you get what I'm saying, you
Yes.
know, like,
Yeah, no,
and you know, for me at that moment I remember I was like, damn. And the crazy part was because I was already kind of going sober, I was already sober when I tried to move to the next venue, and I was trying to get my friends to come. They were nowhere to be found.
No.
And shout out to some of my people that have been, but it just kind of was like an eye opener. Like, all right, I know who's my homie, I know who's not. And to me, that's like, I have to like kind of turn negative energy to positive, because I'm like, that's cool. Like, I need drive. And I've always been a big fan of that. Like, okay, let's turn something negative into positive. So to me, it made me realize like, all right, that's cool. I know you're gonna need me one day. And when you do, I'll be like, oh, we're friends all of a sudden. I'm not gonna call you out, but I'm gonna just be like, yo, like, where were you at when I needed you? You know? And that's the same thing for me as like for us. Like, I always tell myself, like, for example, when you're slow bartending, right? If it's slow outside, like, we're about to hit winter season. We both work at outdoor venues. It's about to be slow. You know? How do you turn that slow night into a positive energy? Like, you probably just get a journal, start writing things down, like, hey, like, what are my goals for 2023 and stuff like that. Like, you know, for me, when it's slow, it's my favorite time because I get to play music that I like to play. You know, not the same like partycore and shit. Like, if I want to play R&B, I'm gonna play some tracks that I haven't played in a long time. There's nobody there. I'm playing for myself. I'm making it. Oh damn, I forgot about this song. Let me add this. Like, I even like to organize my crates while I'm DJing. And I'm like, all right, cool. You got to figure out a way to like turn that negative energy into positive energy, and that's what I did after Bungalow closed. Like, all right, I know like if you're confident in yourself to build something, you're gonna do it, and eventually they're gonna come back and they're gonna want you, they're gonna need you and all that. But
no, I totally agree. Because I think that like when Bungalow closed, and I've even said it in a couple episodes, I completely went off the rocker. All my stability had gone away. I got comfortable because I knew every Friday where I was going to be, every Saturday, every Sunday. I already had a list of who was going to show up, who wasn't going to show up. Then you have that taken away. And I remember there was a point where I was between Rustic Tap and Parlor, and I was having a conversation with you about it because you wanted me to go to Parlor, and I wanted to be there, but I was too afraid because there was something different, something new, and I didn't think that I was ready for it. I didn't want to fail, and with so many things going on in my brain, I was just like, what do I do? Okay, I'm gonna go back to what's comfortable. And what's that got me is that I started to go back into old patterns. I started drinking more. I started like hanging around with people that weren't fulfilling me, weren't doing much. I was spending money that I didn't have. It was going back, like Girls on Fire I was going at a very high rate, and it went down because I wasn't focused on it. I wasn't putting my time into it. And instead I was trying to please this old crowd and be like, no guys, like I'm still fun, I'm still here, like I can still do both, but you wear yourself thin.
Yeah.
And then once you like, that's also a reason why I went back to being sober. And then going back to being sober is just kind of like, did I make the right choice? Was I here? Do I really like this person that I'm hanging around with? Do they bring anything for me? Like, no. And it's crazy when you take a step back and you see it. With it being slow season, I'm like, all right, like, what am I going to do? What are the goals? How am I going to replenish the money, you know?
Yeah.
It's very stressful.
And that's the thing too, like I always try to tell bartenders, like, you know, even bottle girls, man, like, bottle girls make a fuck ton of money. But like the thing is, when winter season hits, they've blown their money going on vacation and buying all this stuff, and they're like pressed for money. And I'm like, well, you know, if you would have saved that money to like get ready for the winter season, at least for DJs, like depending on the venue you work for, because I've seen some places where they short your check and shit like that. Fuck
Oh,
those.
really?
Yeah, fuck those venues. But
Is there a venue in particular you're thinking of?
no, not that I know of here in Austin, but I mean, this shit happened to me in San Antonio a lot, but obviously that's a different market, right? But,
Right.
I remember vividly, like, it pissed me off. I'm like, I'm still putting the same hours of work. Why are you shorting my check? Because it's slow? That's not my fault, right? But, no, that's a whole different subject. But, like, that's the same way, like, you know, bartenders sometimes complain, like, because I've seen bartenders make more than I do, and I'm like, all right, but when it's winter season, like, you know, I'm still gonna get my same pay, so it kind of balances out. I always say it like that. It'll balance out eventually.
Mm.
But unless it's like for some reason like really slow and cold weather's really fucking shit up, then yeah, they cut shifts and stuff like that. But that's even for bartenders, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to kind of realize like, okay, this is busy season. I need at least say 50%. 50% goes to whatever I have, and my other 50 is gonna go to like when it's slow, because now I have that guarantee money. I don't have to be stressing about work.
The perfect example that I can give for this, for those that don't understand, is when I was in Vegas, you had the pool girls. So auditions start in late November, early December.
Yeah.
And it's a very long, intense process to interview, even for pool boys, bottle girls, like servers, everybody for the pool season. Because from pool season, you work from March, like end of March to beginning of August. Sometimes it can extend depending on the weather. Yeah. But just for that amount of time, you work. And a lot of the girls in Vegas, they make over 6 figures.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking like 100,000. I'm talking like 300,000.
Yeah.
They're making it such good money because in Vegas, you're also, once you're part of it, then you get like union stuff, which means you get hourly plus this and all that stuff. Those girls are, not all of them, but majority of the ones that I've encountered are very super focused because they're focused on their routine, they're focused on their fitness, they're focused on their looks because that's what gets them the job and that's what keeps them the job.
Yep.
And then when it's slow season, not only are they prepping to do auditions, because mind you, they don't get to come back and be like, oh, I was here last year.
Yeah.
You have to re-audition and you're competing against like hundreds of girls. Like people will fly out from like LA, New York, just to work there for that amount of time. But they take that money and then they invest it.
Yeah.
So a lot of those girls that you see, like, they don't always have sugar daddies and stuff. They literally are just smart with their money. It's almost like sex workers, like strippers. Actually, no, I'm going to retake that word. Exotic athletes. So they're very smart with their money. Not all of them, but majority of them, if they know what their focus is. So with bartending, it's easy money. It's fast. It's a lot of work. But if you're only going in it to just sustain your lifestyle and you're not going into it with like, okay, it's busy season right now. I'm going to make X amount of money. Okay, cool. So my bills are, let's say, $2,500 a month. I'm making $6,000 that month. Okay, $1,000, put it in savings, or $2,000, put it in savings. The rest of it, a little bit of play money, pay off my bills. All right, repeat. Then once you look at your saving, once winter season hits, if you get cut, you're not stressing. Then maybe you can take your savings and start investing it in other little areas and then let it grow.
Yeah.
the average millionaire has 7 streams of income. There's so many. One of the things that I've like gotten into is like side hustles on TikTok, because I think it's so interesting what people will do for money.
Oh, for sure.
Like you can buy like a spray tan machine. It's like $160 on Amazon. The solution's like $60. I've done the homework. And you can go and do spray tans and charge $20 for a spray tan. That's extra money. You already own the equipment. It's $160 to invest. Look at the profit. It's like buying a vending machine. Average vending machine's like $5,000. Okay, you put it in a low income area. All right, cool. Go to Costco, buy a bunch of snacks. All right, cool. Eventually, you're gonna pay back that. Yeah. That's passive income.
Right.
I think that one of the things that bartenders don't do and utilize is trying to create passive income. So that, because I know, like for me, especially now, one of the biggest eye openers is that I'm not yes, I'm at Rustic Tap. It is what it is. Like, I'm very happy. It's not bungalow, but yeah. I'm happy. But recently, I've had conflict with a coworker. It's caused rift between him and I. And it's just like, okay, is it worth spending 40 hours a week being in this job where I know I have to come in, and if I have to work like an 8-hour shift with this person, that we're just gonna, like, it's just gonna be uncomfortable for me. But knowing that I can't leave because this is my only source of income, that is the worst and shitty feeling. And I've experienced this, not just here, but multiple times.
Yeah.
And it's like people get stuck in that, and that's where alcohol comes in, because then you're like, all right, I'll just have a couple shots in here. Mm-hmm. And then if you haven't addressed the conflict, then,
yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy, but this is the thing, and this is why, like, people need to pay attention, is, like, I love the service industry more than anything, but what happens if you get in a car wreck? What happens if, like, you end up getting cancer?
Yeah.
Where's the money that you've spent? Oh, I know. It's in the Ubers, and it's like putting it in the tip jars and alcohol.
And that's another thing too.
Yeah,
like,
not everybody.
You know, even for me during at that time, like my debt after that, I'm telling you, it was so bad. But it was just one of those things where I'm like, I need to appreciate life. And like, you know, luckily for me, like, and I'm even voicing this now, like, me as a DJ, like, if I'm going to be contracted to be working for a company and solely in that company, I need to make sure you're going to take care of my health, my insurance, and all that. Because it's like, you're contracting me to be in these places, so I need to make sure I'm good in that aspect, where if I need to get a therapist, I need to get a therapist. If I get sick, I get sick. Because you're telling me that you sold me one exclusively, then you care about my health. Am I right? Because the way I see it, I'm an asset to you. And if you want your asset to be okay, you want to make this is busy season, I need to at least say 50%. 50% goes to whatever I have, and my other 50 is going to go to like when it's slow, because now I have that guarantee money. I don't have to be stressing about work.
The perfect example that I can give for this, for those that don't understand, is when I was in Vegas, you had the pool girls. So auditions start in late November, early December.
Yeah.
And it's a very long, intense process to interview, even for pool boys, bottle girls, like servers, everybody, for the pool season. Because from pool season, you work from March, like end of March, to beginning of August. Sometimes it can extend depending on the weather. Yeah. But just for that amount of time, you work. And a lot of the girls in Vegas, they make over 6 figures. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking like 100,000. I'm talking like 300,000. Yeah. They're making it such good money, because in Vegas, you're also, once you're part of it, then you get like union stuff, which means you get hourly plus this and all that stuff. Those girls are, not all of them, but majority of the ones that I've encountered are very super focused, because they're focused on their routine, they're focused on their fitness, they're focused on their looks, because that's what gets them the job and that's what keeps them the job. Yep. And then when it's slow season, not only are they prepping to do auditions, because mind you, they don't get to come back and be like, oh, I was here last year. Yeah. You have to re-audition, and you're competing against like hundreds of girls. Like, people will fly out from like LA, New York, just to work there for that amount of time. But they take that money and then they invest it. Yeah. So a lot of those girls that you see, like, they don't always have sugar daddies and stuff. They literally are just smart with their money. It's almost like sex workers, like strippers. Actually, no, I'm gonna retake that word. Exotic athletes. So they're very smart with their money. Not all of them, but majority of them, if they know what their focus is. So with bartending, it's easy money. It's fast. It's a lot of work. But if you're only going in it to just sustain your lifestyle and you're not going into it with like, okay, it's busy season right now. I'm going to make X amount of money. Okay, cool. So my bills are, let's say, $2,500 a month. I'm making $6,000 that month. Okay, $1,000, put it in savings, or $2,000, put it in savings. The rest of it, a little bit of play money, pay off my bills. All right, repeat. Then once you look at your savings, once winter season hits, what if you get cut, you're not stressing. Then maybe you can take your savings and start investing it in other little areas and then let it grow.
Yeah.
The average millionaire has 7 streams of income. There's so many. One of the things that I've like gotten into is like side hustles on TikTok, because I think it's so interesting what people will do for money.
Oh, for sure.
Like you can buy like a spray tan machine. It's like $160 on Amazon. The solution's like $60. I've done the homework. And you can go and do spray tans and charge $20 for a spray tan. That's extra money. You already own the equipment. It's $160 to invest. Look at the profit. It's like buying a vending machine. Average vending machine's like $5,000. Okay, you put it in a low income area. All right, cool. You go to Costco, buy a bunch of snacks. All right, cool. Eventually you're going to pay back that. That's passive income.
Right.
I think that one of the things that bartenders don't do and utilize is trying to create passive income. So that, because I know, like for me, especially now, one of the biggest eye openers is that I'm not yes, I'm at Rustic Tap. It is what it is. Like, I'm very happy. It's not bungalow, but I'm happy. But recently I've had conflict with a coworker. It's caused rift between him and I. And it's just like, okay, is it worth spending 40 hours a week being in this job where I know I have to come in, and if I have to work like an 8-hour shift with this person, that we're just gonna it's just gonna be uncomfortable for me, but knowing that I can't leave because this is my only source of income, that is the worst and shitty feeling. And I've experienced this not just here, but multiple times.
Yeah.
And it's like people get stuck in that, and that's where alcohol comes in, because then you're like, all right, I'll just have a couple shots in here, and then if you haven't addressed the conflict, then you know, it's crazy. But this is the thing, and this is why like people need to pay attention. Is like, I love the service industry more than anything, but what happens if you get in a car wreck? What happens if you end up getting cancer? Where's the money that you've spent? Oh, I know, it's in the Ubers, and it's like putting it in the tip jars and alcohol.
And that's another thing too.
Again, not everybody.
You know, even for me during at that time, like my debt after that, I'm telling you, it was so bad. But it was just one of those things where I'm like, I need to appreciate life. And like, you know, luckily for me, like, and I'm even voicing this now, like, me as a DJ, like, if I'm going to be contracted to be working for a company and solely in that company, I need to make sure you're going to take care of my health, my insurance, and all that. Because it's like, you're contracting me to be in these places. So I need to make sure I'm good in that aspect, where if I need to get a therapist, I need to get a therapist. If I get sick, I get sick. Because you're telling me that you sold me one exclusively, then you care about my health. Am I right? Because the way I see it, I'm an asset to you. And if you want your asset to be okay, you want to make sure that asset has good health and stuff like that. And that's why, like, nowadays is, you know, for example, bartenders, like, that's one thing that I wish we had here, like unions and those, like for DJs, like, oh, man, like, I wish we could make that happen. It's just so hard, because it's like, we're replaceable, you know? That's the hard thing. Like, believe it or not, like, unless you're really good at what you do, somehow, somewhere, you're replaceable. You know, we're very, like, for example, your situation, you got into it with a coworker, right? Let's just say the manager decides that one side's better than the other, whatever both sides are, right? Even though your side's right. And they're like, oh, we'll just get another girl. you know, and that's the shitty part about like being a woman, you know, because it's like, oh, we can just find another hot chick, you know, and it sucks. Like, and for men, it's like we don't deal with that, you know, we don't have to deal with that. It's all that stupid machismo shit, you know, um, and with DJs, same thing too. Like, you know, there's egos and, you know, somebody getting fucked up saying this. I mean, there've been times for me when I've gotten fucked up and said shit I shouldn't have said. But luckily for me, my brand was big enough to be like, you know, good enough where I can come in and apologize and stuff like that. But then you start telling yourself too, like I need to be a person bigger than my brand because my brand is who I am. If my brand perceives me for this person, then that's not good, you know? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that should be for everybody that's in the industry too. Like, you know, the person who I am, when you hire me, it was like, yo, that person's a good time. That person does a job. This person does this, and that. Because eventually you'll move up. You know, that's everybody wants to do. Like, you want to move up, and eventually, like, maybe someday they'll offer you partner, you know? And if you become partner, guess what? You don't have to be behind a freaking thing bartending. And eventually you make more money. Guess what happens? You open another bar or invested in something else, and you start growing and growing and growing. And people don't think about that, you know? They think about that moment with the
bartenders. Except for maybe some Yelpers.
Yeah, but I mean, that's probably the person that couldn't get in or did some dumb shit, realistically. Like, but like, you never heard about like any bad drama on a bungalow ever, you know? Mm-mm.
But it's crazy because I'll go to other bars and I hear all the tea. Yeah. And then you can't help but kind of get involved in it, and then it's just it consumes you. But this is why I care about the industry, is because at the end of the day we are human beings, and we all put sometimes our mental health at line to create a party for people, to make them feel cool. We're salespeople. Yeah. We're selling alcohol. We're selling an experience. We're selling a party. Yeah. And we're making these people that own the building, that own the bar, that own the brand, that, like, you know, the reps, we're making all these people money. We're at the bottom of the totem pole. Mm-hmm. Even though from like a hostess perspective, bartenders are up higher, or from, you know, like there's a pole, there's like a ladder, right? Yeah. But we're at the bottom.
The food chain.
Yeah. So if you just interrupt the top people's, like, in any shape, way, or form, doesn't matter, whether it's one bad Yelp review, what if it's one bad shift that you had a bad day, or anything like that, you're out the door. Yep. And then what does that do to that person? It depends on what they're going through, what they're experiencing. That's why I try to bring awareness to it, because I've been let go. I've been down there. I'm sure you've experienced things like that. Mm-hmm. You know, DJs and bartenders, we all work together simultaneously. It's not like, this is the service industry. It's not just the bartenders are better than the DJs, or, you know, vice versa. We all come together to create an environment. And I think that was something that Bungalow taught me, is to get rid of that veil. Because I remember the first time you and I interacted, I didn't even pay attention to you. Oh,
it was weird, to be honest. I remember vividly. I'm like, oh, okay, we got somebody new here. Did not talk. Like, you were very just like straight to work. And then you knew a couple people here and there, but like that were working there. But you were very like straight, like not like, you know, not loose and all that. And to like now become friends and stuff like that, it's crazy. Like when I actually remember that too. So, but yeah, like it was one of those things where you know, John was really good about that. You know, making sure everybody was like, hey, like let's go hang out, like, you know, let's go do this together, guys, and stuff like that. Which, you know, like, love John, man. I love seeing him around, and you know, and I know wherever he goes, and I've heard some things, but you know, wherever he goes, I know he's gonna always bring that to the table and stuff like that. So it's like, I'm glad John was our manager. I mean, there was some things that me and him butted, because
I butted with him too. Don't worry.
us being creatives, like, you know, we're perfectionists. We want things a certain way and stuff like that.
We gotta see a vision. Yeah. It's making sure that vision is like together.
Yeah. So like him being the GM, and you know, even now with Mike and Emilio at Key Bar and Parlor, like when I see something, you know, like I'm like, hey, I see this vision. I just need you to have my back, you know, and I'll have yours. Like, let's work this out where we can be like, hey.
I love Emilio.
Yeah, I love Emilio too. It's
He never speaks.
When he speaks, but like so far he's like probably like next to Cleaver and Tommy, like probably been one of my favorite managers to work with because it's like he gets it done. I'm like, yo, I need this. It will be done next week.
Mm-hmm.
He gets it done. And like, you know, even my buddy Anthem was telling me the other day, like, I've never worked at a venue when something's fucked up and you like tell him, you come back the next day or your shift or like the week after and it's fixed. Like, that's crazy to me.
You should. So Tony, Chris, Jose, Leticia, Irani, they've all worked for Emilio back when Emilio ran Bungalow before the pandemic.
Yeah.
They are so loyal to Emilio. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
It's ridiculous.
But they're hustlers, man. They get the job done. They're always working. They don't complain.
So his wife Patricia also will bartend, and it's my favorite dynamic to watch because not once does like their marriage ever come between work that I've seen.
No, me either. And like
You're like, you're married to Emilio?
Yeah.
Like, never would have guessed. Like, she comes in, she's so bubbly, she's so positive, she's
high energy. Yeah, like I didn't even know one time until Emilia told me. I was just like, wait, what? I was like, that's cool. Like, and like when I remember first meeting her, same thing. Like, very positive energy. Like, hey, you did a great job today. Like, and I'm
she's
just
the best.
Yeah, she's so cool, for sure. But
well, R.I.P. Bungalow. But okay, so we're gonna do a part 2 series. So as you guys know, in previous episodes, I like to play this game called We're Not Really Strangers. So you guys are gonna have to tune in for next Monday's episode and listen to me play with Christian the We're Not Really Strangers game. But I do, to recap this episode, want to say thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being somebody that's super inspirational to the people in Austin, Texas. And most importantly, thank you for being my friend. You've been my homie forever, and I love you so much.
I got you.
So with that being said, if you guys want to follow CRG, make sure to follow him on Instagram at
DJ CRG on all my socials, and except for Twitter. If you are a Twitter listener, I'm trying to get the DJ CRG handle. It's not been used for 10 years. It's just been sitting there. But it's DJ CRG on all my handles. You can find me on everything. So.
Okay. And just make sure to stay tuned every Monday for new episodes at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Make sure to follow, like, subscribe, all things Girls on Fire ATX. And until then, I will see y'all next Monday.